Welcome in, everybody. Hello, how are we all doing? Hope we are all well. We've got some more Legions Imperialis today, the new tiny tanks. Tiny tanks are awesome, and this one is going to be painted up. We're going to paint this one up as a Night Lords. I've been trying to figure out some methods and kind of tactics for painting these Legions, the tiny tanks and everything. It would be very easy to just kind of paint them one colour. I do like having a little bit of a colour shift on them. It just adds a little bit of interest. So we do go with a bit of a highlight. The airbrush really helps with these things like this. It's the same with Titanicus as well. Like if you're going to paint Titanicus or you're going to paint Legions, like an airbrush really does help. It speeds things up. It adds like a nice little soft highlight and blend and everything on it. And it's no different with this tiny little tank. So we're going to do Night Lords Blue. It's thinned down. It's probably thinned down a bit more than 50-50, so probably, I don't know, about 60-70% thinner and 40-30% paint, something like that. Because I didn't want it to be too opaque as we were putting it on, so I wanted to add a little bit of translucency in the shadows. So where basically into the shadows, it's not going to go very blue. You got a little bit darker. Gives a little bit of separation and everything before we kind of carry on with the highlights and the pin washing and everything like that. It's just basically with these things, you're building up lots and lots of little layers of detail and layers of interest across the whole model. So yes, that's the Night Lords Blue, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add a kind of a pre-highlight on it. I make sure that when you're doing the pre-highlight, you position, like I'm doing here, position the turret how you want it, because the pre-highlight is then going to add the shadow in, if you like, underneath the barrels and the turrets and things. So that this pre-highlight here, we're obviously going to have a hotspot where the hatch is, and all we're going to do, this is really thin down. So this is Sminker Titanium White. You can use Tamiya Flat White. Tamiya Flat White is also a really great kind of pre-highlight colour like this. But what I'm trying to do is apply this softly everywhere, so you get kind of a very gradual grey fade everywhere. As you can see, it just kind of gives a little bit of a pump everywhere, and then you're going to pick out like hot spots where I want it to be a little bit hotter. So when I'm just turning it around, there we go. So the near side corner there, I want that to be a little bit hotter, and then the same between the barrels as well. We want that to be a little bit hotter. It just adds a bit of interest and a bit of a focal point for the blue when we get the blue on as well. Yeah, you can see there you've already got like some light volumes and light directions showing on the model. And it just because they're so small, it provides a little bit of kind of contextual lighting going on. I like it. I just think it looks better. I think it looks cool. I've also done this on the Emperor's Children as well, so there's an Emperor's Children video. If you haven't seen that one, go over and pop and have a look at that one as well, because that one's really cool as well. Yeah, so this is Sminker Titanium White. It's thinned down an awful lot. Try and thin down white a lot, otherwise it will speckle. The trick with thinning down the white paint is that you can then kind of build it up in nice kind of gradual layers like that. So you have a very good grey, and then you can put more layers on to make it go a little bit more white. So this is the first and kind of only highlight really. So we've got the Night Lords Blue as an undertone. You've then got this white kind of going over the top of it, and then as you can see, as you apply this is quite thinned down. So you're almost kind of glazing it on. You've got to put one coat on like that, let that dry, and then come back to it and address it again. So it's Cantor Blue. It goes on really nicely. It's like I say, it's thinned down, probably 70% thinner, 30% paint, something like that. And yeah, you can just build it up in layers, and focus on the transitions. So you give it a good glaze over the top of the white, and then you can kind of soften it out as you go down towards the Night Lord's blue. It's really, really good. It's a really, really easy way of doing things like this, and you can do this en masse as well. Like I've done all the tanks, so between doing these the takes, if you like, so I turn the camera off and then I do like the other 4, 5, 6 tanks that I've got, including the Kratos as well. So there's a video coming for the Kratos as well, because that's really, really cool. Yeah, the little Sicarans just look amazing. They do have 2 different turrets as well, so you can have the auto cannons, or you can have the Volkite, whatever they're called. So the Volkite turret looks really, really good as well. So I basically just did one of each on everything. I wasn't too worried about looking at the rules and trying to find out which one was best. I just think they both look cool, so I was like, okay, I'll have one tank in one and one tank with the other. There is, in fact, the other tank, and you can see the difference that highlight has made straight away. So the kind of the dark blue, and now we've got a bit of a variation and a highlight graduation, if you like, going up to that Cantor blue. But if you turn it upside down, then it does look turret's always falling off. It does look darker as you kind of get underneath it as well. So you could go even more with that if you wanted to do a more kind of concentrated highlight up at the top and really soften it down. That would just mean you wouldn't do as much of a kind of a grey highlight down the side of the tank. So you would just kind of concentrate that pre-highlight along the top. That would also look quite cool, so that you get a bit more of a variation down the side of the tank. That would be cool. Right now, so doing the metallics on this. So again, because it's small, I really wanted the contrast to pop. So if I was to paint the metallics over the blue, you'd have blue in the recesses, and that wouldn't be kind of like the best way of doing it. So I wanted a bit more contrast. That's one of the things with these smart, tiny little tanks. You want to kind of push the contrast as much as you can when you can around the details. And the details on this is obviously like the guns and all the kind of the ammo parts and things. So this is model color black. It's a really, really good matte black that you can work in. And I basically went around and applied this to all the metals and all the kind of black areas. So for instance, the turret is going to be black as well. I just thought the turret being black would look really, really good as Night Lords. And then all the guns, all the tracks, and then the funky little bit at the front. I don't know what that's called, but yeah, the little bit on the inside of the inside of the body, I suppose. And so it's been given a coat of gloss varnish. Again, a very, very quick coat of gloss varnish. That was a little bit for this, for the pin washing, and also for the transfers as well. The transfers that you get in the box are quite, they're an annoying size, let's put it that way. Like, the sizes don't seem to fit any of the panels on the tanks. It's really frustrating because the panels on the tanks are all tiny. And it's quite difficult to find areas where the transfers actually sit. But as you can see, I found a bit for the Night Lords transfers, and they've just been kind of dropped on over the gloss varnish. I did use a little bit of microset just once they'd dried and settled in there. And then now, because we've got that gloss varnish on, we're just going to go around and we're going to pin wash some Black Templar across everything. Now I did try some oil paint as well. I just thought, so the oil paint I used on the Emperor's Children one, I just thought for this particular video I thought I'd try some contrast paint instead. Like, not everybody's got access to oil paint, and I wanted to see how the contrast paint kind of settled in on the scale of it. Now one of the benefits of contrast paint is that you can use like a sable brush, which is good. However, you can also kind of cheat a little bit with contrast paint as well, so you can kind of blob it on. I mean, you can with oils as well. You can blob it on and then remove it with a paintbrush and kind of stain it and remove the stain and make sure that the pin wash. So I was being a little bit lazy with it. Yeah, if you do kind of slip up, you can kind of just drag it off a little bit before it dries. But also, it's like when you do slip up, because the tank's so small, it's almost like it's a little bit of a damage mark sort of thing. So it adds a little bit of interest as well. But yeah, so running this contrast paint all the way around all the recesses, all the edges, try and find all the panel lines. There's some really awkward little panel lines on here, like down at the front, the two armour panels which go across the tracks at the front don't really have a panel gap as much. It's almost like a I don't know, a space between two panels rather than, yeah, anyway, you know what I mean. Or maybe you don't. But yeah, so run some panel lines across all this. These bits here, they're just a weird one to try to kind of run your brush into. As you can see, I'm not being particularly careful, I'm not being particularly clean or anything. They are going to have a quick edge highlight after this, but it does kind of dry quite well into the recesses. The contrast paint is thinned a little bit. It's probably got I don't know, 30% water in it. I don't use the technical contrast medium or anything like that, but yeah. So it's just black contrast paint. Now the fun bit, we're going to do some lightning strikes with this now. So the lightning strikes are slightly challenging. Not particularly challenging in terms of getting the lightning strikes done, but almost positioning them and making sure that they kind of work well. The best way I've found to do them is make sure that they're going. I mean, this one doesn't work. In my view, this one doesn't work because it's going horizontally. That, like, if you're on a vertical panel, I try and make them go down. So try and make the lightning strike go down, and then if you're on a horizontal panel like that one at the top, make the lightning strike go forwards. Now there is a kind of a little bit of a caveat to that, and that I do on a couple of occasions where I drag this lightning strike and I take it from this horizontal plane here over the edge and then down the side, so that works quite well as well. So if you want to do that, now you'll notice these aren't like zigzag lightning strikes. Don't do zigzag lightning strikes. Zigzag lightning strikes don't work on this scale. If you look at a bolt of lightning as well, it's not really a zigzag as much. It's a lot more kind of not particularly smooth, but you'll get kind of straight lines, not straight lines, like wavy lines, like I've done like there anyway. So they are just do kind of a couple of wiggles, add some kind of branches coming off them, and then we'll go back to them and we'll highlight them back up after that. Yeah, one of the best things to do when you're doing these freehands, one of the important things is trying to make sure that the brush stays at the same angle to the model, and you want it to be quite steep. So you want it to be quite a steep angle. Don't let the brush shallow off. So you don't want it to be quite too shallow to the model, because if you have it shallow to the model, then it's more likely to blob, because you've got to be very, very precise with how much pressure you've got. If you accidentally put a little bit too much pressure on there, you could splay out the brush a little bit more. So try and have the paintbrush quite vertical, quite straight on, and that will help you with the nice straight lines. Now what we're doing here, obviously the Night Lord's Legion symbol has the red wings, which are really, really cool. So I got some, I think this is corn red, it was just some red that was left on the wet palette. I thinned it down quite a lot, so what we can do is we can glaze it over these transfers, and if we always glaze it in the line of the wings, then you get a little bit of texture across the wings as well. So yeah, just kind of make sure that if you make a paintbrush pass across the wings and almost wet that surface, then you can have a little bit more paint on the brush, and then because that surface is wet, it will then the glazed paint will then flow into that wet area, so you can kind of control where it goes, and once you've wet the wing, you can then be a little bit more crude, if you like, about filling it in. But that's what they look like, and it's such a simple little thing. And it really, really does help. And then we're obviously going to weather over the top of it as well, just to kind of pull everything together. Yeah, Night Lords look amazing. So this is when we've had a few more little bits of lightning on there. You can see there's still just little wobbly lines. Yeah, I think they look great. You can go, like some of the Kratos tanks, I've added a few more lines to, a few more lightning strikes to. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get some black metal, and we're going to apply some black metal to all the metallics. So all the metallics that that we'd painted black, and go in and just kind of neatly pick out some of the metallics on there. Now on the barrels, you'll notice on the barrels, because the barrels are very, very long, you can add a little bit of detail by just picking out certain areas of the barrels and then leaving some black. So you can see the, I don't know what they're called, but like half of the barrel has got is silver, and then you've got those black bands around the side of them, and then you've got like, I don't know what they are, but they're like the recoil, almost like accordion bits on the end of the barrel. So I left those black as well. We can highlight those afterwards, but anything that you can do to break up the, not like the monotony, but break up the colours, and that will always kind of add interest to the model. Now don't do what I'm doing here and highlight the edges. We're going to get to highlighting the edges in another bit, but yeah, don't highlight edges of the black with silver. We can highlight that with grey later on, but yeah, just going over and just hitting every single metallic area with some of this black metal. It does cover really, really well, so if you have forgotten an area like this and you didn't put some black on, then you can just pick it out as well with black metal straight over the top. They are really, really cool tanks. They're very, very interesting. I've really enjoyed painting them all up. Now this is a little kind of it's kind of optional, but medium blue. It's the kind of the same as Araman blue as well. So if you haven't got medium blue, use Araman blue. I'm just going to go around and kind of catch some edge highlights. Any edge which is facing upwards, I'm not going around every single edge. It's just edges which are facing upwards. I want to, or edges which are particularly prominent. So like this edge here. So those edges I want to be kind of just a little bit more prominent in the way that they read when you're looking at the tank. So yeah, any edge which is facing upwards, I'm not doing any downwards edges. That's just like too much work and it's not really necessary. So yeah, prominent or upwards facing edges, just kind of go along and just give them a very, very quick edge highlight. You could do like a little tappy edge highlight as well if you wanted to. So rather than running the brush all the way along, you could just kind of tap it along and show a little bit of almost textured battle damage. That might be quite cool. Just adds again, we're just looking for little details which add interest to the whole model. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do Night Lords as well, because you have that lightning strikes on the armor, and without the lightning strikes, without the things like that, you'd have to do battle damage across the whole armor to add some interest. I think that would be quite cool. That works really well on Imperial Fists. So if you've got Imperial Fists, I haven't done any Imperial Fists, but if you've got Imperial Fists, and you can add some battle damage to those, and the battle damage on yellow obviously shows up really, really well, because you can do it kind of rusty and brown and stuff. But because I didn't want to put too much battle damage on this one, I just thought I'd do edge highlights on it all. So go around every edge you can. You can also, if you've got a kind of a steady hand, you can try and pick out some of the bolts, like I was doing there. So you can pick out some of the bolts as well. One of the biggest things about this is trying to get the consistency right on the paint. So this is a little bit less than 50-50, so it's probably 60% paint, 40% water. So it's not quite as thin as I would usually paint, and that's exactly the same. I'm sorry, I didn't say this before. It's exactly the same with the lightning strikes as well. So the lightning strikes, you want that paint to be a little bit thicker than normal. If you have it too thin, if you have that paint too thin, then it will soften as it dries, and then it won't have that nice kind of sharp mark to it. So yeah, try to have those lightning strikes, try to have that paint a little bit thicker than you would, or than I would normally paint. So yeah, and then so this is the Kratos tank, and we're going to use a red ochre from Rival Crafts. I'll put the link in the description. And we're going to put a couple of drops of that in a dish, add some water, and then we're just going to make a pigment wash. Now, adding water is literally just a medium to get the pigment onto the model, and it's my favourite way to get pigment powders onto models, creating a pigment wash like this, because then the water will evaporate and it will leave the pigment in recesses in a slightly more natural kind of way, if you like. So this has had, there's a few things to talk about here. So this has had a coat of matte varnish to kind of seal everything in, and also if you look at the lightning strikes, we've also highlighted some of those lightning strikes as well. So we've gone in with a lighter blue, and we've just kind of gone in, and wherever there's a fork, I've highlighted that fork, so highlighted the lightning strike around that fork just to kind of add some intention to it. And we're going around sloshing this, literally we're just going to slosh it everywhere. It's going to be everywhere on the underside, so anything that's kind of downwards facing, anything that's on the tracks, and then also dragging it very, very carefully over the white of the transfers as well, and that will help kind of age those and soften them into the model as well. Yeah, so this is, it's just that the red ochre is going to be what I'm going to use on all the Night Lord's bases as well. So for all the infantry, we're going to have red ochre, this red ochre pigment powder all over the bases on there as well. And you can't really go wrong with it. Like if you slosh it on, if it looks a little bit too heavy, you can just get your brush and just pull it away a little bit. It won't pull it all off. You'll still have a few tiny little pigment particles in that sloshed area, but like a few little tiny pigment particles is absolutely fine, and that's kind of what you want. And then we'll show you what it looks like when it's all dried out. Yeah, this is I need to do a video on using pigment powders and like ways to use them. And once it has dried, now one of the things you can do, so once it's dried, it dries quite strong. But what I do once it has dried is I then give it another coat of varnish. Now that's not to seal the pigment powders in, because they're not going anywhere. Like you're in a little tank here, that you're not going to accidentally brush some of those pigment powders that are in the recesses away. That's just not going to happen. You can't do it. However, what the varnish does do is it just softens them and just knocks them back a little bit, because they can get a little bit overpowering, and obviously because these tanks are so small, I wanted them to be a little bit more subtle. So if you give them a coat of gloss varnish, not gloss varnish, if you give them a coat of matte varnish after it's all dried, then it just kind of softens them down and just gives them a little bit more. So you've got a bit more variation in the colour now. So you've got like slightly soft, and then you've got the really so underneath, for instance, the one on the left there, underneath the Night Lord's logo, you've got a really heavy kind of collection of dirt, whereas down at the front you've got the variations of like a little bit of a brown, and then a lot of kind of rusty red brown. But yeah, there we go. The only thing that I really should have done on this one, I picked up the wrong turret, is that I should have drilled the barrels for the autocannons. And then one thing that we didn't talk about as well is the turrets. So the turrets have just had a medium grey, I think it's called black grey from Vallejo, and then I just kind of ran edges and edge highlights across all the turrets and just picked out some of the details just to finish those off. The accelerator cannon, the Volkite, whatever it is, on the Sicaran on the left, that's just had a coat of is it Magmadon Flesh, the orange contrast paint. I could probably go back in with some ice yellow and pick out the tops of the coils there as well. That would be quite cool. But other than that, there are two Night Lord Sicaran tanks for your viewing pleasure. Thank you very, very much. I hope you enjoyed watching this one. There are plenty more Legions Imperialis videos coming, including some Emperor's Children ones as well, which I know you won't want to miss because they look amazing. Really pleased with how the Emperor's Children ones have come out. So if you'd like to hang out and watch those ones when they drop, that would be really cool. Please drop me a follow and a subscription, that would be great. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. It's just @ChrisFrostin. And please come and find me on Twitch. I'm streaming most days of the week. and that's twitch.tv/Chris Froston as well. I'll put all the links down below in the description, so if you want to go, in fact, if you do want to go down to the description, there's lots of interesting things down in the descriptions for links for tools and paintbrushes and the things that I use. So if you want to go and support the channel in that way, then go and grab some of those. So thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.